Hi, this is Dan Brown, and I'm going to go over how I create service slides in ProPresenter, ProPresenter 6 for the New Haven Seventh-day Adventist Church. First, I want to give you a quick overview of ProPresenter, and this video is assuming that you've already watched the training videos that are available on the ProPresenter website. There's a lot of training videos, and I would recommend going through those first, and that will give you an overview of everything that you can do in the software. So this video will just show you how I go in and edit the slides and update them for the current week or current Sabbath. So just a quick overview of ProPresenter. You have the menu options across the top here. The main one we're going to be working with is this editor button here, and kind of going through the different windows here. In the upper left, this is actually what's going to be displayed on the screens up in front, so you know exactly what is going to be displayed. The next area down is the library area, and this is where we have all the songs and all the presentations that we would use. So if you think of this as like PowerPoint, any one of these that you click on is basically kind of like a separate PowerPoint. You can easily search for songs too. We have most of the hymns actually in this library. So if I do a search for 565, for instance, you can see that I have a hymn number here, 565, and then I could utilize that hymn very quickly. This is also where you can get to Song Select. So it allows you to go down and actually do a search for Song Select. If I do something like Majesty, it's going to pull up everything that may have Majesty in it. And if I go down below here, you can see that I actually can pull in songs from Song Select too that are listed here. So it's pretty flexible that way. And then the last area down here is actually the playlist area. This is the main area that we actually set up for each church service. You can see that I have two different playlists here. I have an announcements playlist. This is where we can actually put in different announcements. There is a way that you can actually loop the announcements, so we'll go from slide to slide automatically. That's a possibility as well. Or I actually have some static announcements here that all I have to do is just click on them, and you'll see that that will go live to the screens themselves. The other thing to be aware of is you'll notice that I'm changing around to different presentations, and this is one of the advantages of ProPresenter, is that I can go and actually edit presentations, and nothing goes live until I actually click on this on the slide itself. So I can go and actually make changes to presentations, and it doesn't affect what people actually see on the screen. So let's go through how we're going to set up a new service, a new playlist. So the first thing I'm going to do is come down here and create a new playlist. Now let's call this service, and I do the date usually, so 7/11/20. You'll see that this is empty here. I set this up, if I go back to this other one, so these little red dots here are actually what are called headers. And it just makes it easier when you're running through the presentation to have these header files here. And it just makes it a little easier to organize. So I'll come in here, and I'm going to create a new header. And I will call this header service. I'll come in and create another header here called praise songs. I'll create another header called sermon, and then I'll create another header called closing song. We can move these around, so for instance I put the service one at the top, closing obviously goes next, sermon actually comes after the praise songs. The other thing that I like to do is, just so these stand out a little more, is if you do a right click on this, you can change the header color, and I usually just change those to red, and that way you can see that they pop out a little more, and it just makes it easier to see each one of these. And then here, header color again. All right, this is just something easier for me to see. So you can see if I go back over here, It just makes it a little easier to see. Now the first thing I'm going to do is let's pull in an existing service we have so we can just modify that. And I'll use this other one that we had called Friend. We'll just utilize that one. In another video I'll go in and actually show you how to change the backgrounds. But you'll see now that we have in our playlist we have this church services Friend. To make modifications to that, like say for instance you're going to put in who is doing the tithes and offering, maybe you have a scripture reading here, you're going to change the title of the sermon, and then you may have a closing song. So right now we're in presentation mode. You can see that if I click on each slide, any slide that I click on is actually going to go live here. So the way that we toggle back and forth between editor mode and display mode is using this editor slide here. I think there's a way to actually do it up on the top too. So if there is a pull down here that allows you to edit the slide too, but I don't remember which one that is. So, I always click on the editor. And once I do that, you'll see that I go into an edit mode, and it gives me all the slides here on the left. This is the slide itself, kind of like a PowerPoint view. We have a ruler at the top, and then over on the left-hand side, we have ways of modifying the whole document. This would be a change to all of the slides themselves. I can change for each individual slide. You can see this one's highlighted here, and that will change this individual slide. I can change slide builds, object properties on the slide itself, and then even the text itself. So for instance, say we're going to change this song here. And I don't know, I'm just gonna pick one here, Faith of Our Fathers. So you'll see that this is a text box, and I click on it, and I can come in here and edit the text within the text box. So for instance, I'll change this Faith of Our Fathers, and that one is actually 304. So when I click on this, if I want to modify any of these, you can see I have everything from bold, italic, etc. just by modifying these, and I can make them larger or smaller depending on how you want the slide itself to look. As far as the backgrounds, I'll go over that in a minute, but we have this video library here, so if I actually wanted to change the background, I have a bunch of default backgrounds in here already pre-built. So say I have like a solid color background. What I can do is just grab one of these and drag it and drop it, and you'll see that it actually changes the background just for that particular slide. All right, let me undo that. And that's the video image tray here. So next, if you have a person for tithes and offerings, sometimes I would go in and put the person's name in there. That's optional. Do the same thing with call to prayer. Say we want to come in and actually change the scripture. So just again, you double click on the text box. You can change it if you want to make this text bigger or smaller. Make sure that you're on the little tab here on the right side, and you can make that larger or smaller. You might have a change to the sermon title. We can do that as well, and then we have actually who's doing the sermon, for instance. And then we have the closing hymn there. I won't bother changing that. And I always put up just a goodbye slide so that can be shown at the very end of the sermon. Just like at the very beginning, we have a kind of a themed welcome slide here. So now that's actually how we're changing this particular presentation. So I'll close. Notice how if I click on edit, to get out of edit mode, I just click on this little X here, and I'm back into presentation mode. You can see as I click on this, it's actually going to go to the screen. Now, the next thing we'll have to do is that we do have these songs here. So say this Faith of Our Fathers, number 304, is going to be part of our service. You can see that I have that hymn already done here in my library. So all I have to do is take that and drag it down into my playlist, and now I have this Faith of Our Fathers available to me when we're ready to sing it, and you just kind of click on it and go. We also have a closing hymn here, which is hymn 321. So if I do a search here, hymn 321, I have that one in my library as well. So all I have to do is drag that down and add that to the closing song. Let me change my header color here. I forgot that one. Okay, so now we have our service slide pretty well done. We have our opening song, closing song. The next things we have to do is get the praise songs. Praise songs are sent to us by George Platt usually, and usually get an email from George sometime during the week, and he will send out a list of the songs that they're doing. In this case, we're doing 83, 262, and 567. So now if you're lucky, those songs are actually going to be in the library already, and you won't have to type them all in or import them. So for instance, we have a praise song, so there's just 2 praise songs this particular week. So 267, or 262, and 567. So we'll do 262, and that one is actually in the library. So this one, all I have to do is drag that and drop it into the playlist for the praise song. And then the other one was 567. So if I look up 567, that one is actually in here as well. And I just drag and drop that into the playlist. Most of the hymns are in there. Most of the common ones that we sing are in there. Every once in a while you'll have to retype one in. Now also, if you want to change the background for any of these slides, this is something that's unique in ProPresenter, is the backgrounds are actually on their own layer. So you'll see that I have this purple one here. If I want to change that, say to this yellowish one, all I have to do is drag and drop that onto the first slide, and it's going to use that background even though the subsequent slides don't have a background. If I rotate through, you'll see that it uses the background of that first slide. So you only have to put the background on the first slide. If I don't like that one, I can drag and drop or find a different one that actually looks better. You know, this actually has a darker text on it, so that one might actually look a little better, or maybe even just, you know, black background. So this is just where creativity comes into play, I guess, and you can use whichever one you want. All right, so we have that one done. Now the last thing we have to do is the sermon itself. The sermon slides are done by the speaker. So I'll go over how Pastor Roof does it, and that's probably going to be the most common. We utilize Dropbox to save all of our documents in. So I have Dropbox on this particular computer, and it synchronizes it down. And Pastor Roof puts his sermon up onto Dropbox usually late Friday night or early Saturday morning. So this will have to be done before the service itself. So you'll notice that this is in a PowerPoint, so it's PowerPoint format. ProPresenter will actually import PowerPoints. Okay, so if I go back over to my ProPresenter, if I do a file import, you'll notice that I have a couple different options here, one of them being PowerPoint. If I click on PowerPoint, I now browse out to that particular PowerPoint that was sent to me. And you'll see down at the bottom here that I have 3 options. I can import all the slides as JPEGs. I can import the text objects as ProPresenter slide elements, or the text and graphics as ProPresenter slide elements. We've never had luck with these last 2, so we import everything as a JPEG. The advantage is it comes across exactly like it looks in PowerPoint. The disadvantage is you can't make any changes to the slide once it's in ProPresenter, but that's, you know, the speaker sets it up the way they want it, and we just import it that way. Okay, so we click on that, choose open, and then it goes through the process of importing this particular PowerPoint. And it usually goes pretty quick here. All right, so now you'll see that this sermon is actually in my playlist. So all I have to do is take that and drag that down and drop it into the sermon slide itself. So now we have this particular PowerPoint available to us too. to play. One caveat here is that you'll notice that if I click on this slide, see how it's still showing this background? As I go through these, it's still going to show some of this background. That is that background layer I was talking about. There's two ways to actually clear that. I can manually clear the background. So if I click on this, it's going to go back and clear that background itself. What I prefer to do is if I right click on the first slide, I can add what's called a cue to this, and there's something called a clear action cue. So what I will do is come in here and I can clear audio, clear background. I just do a clear all, and that will just clear anything. Once I click on this, it'll just automatically clear any backgrounds, and it's like starting from fresh in the presentation itself. Okay, so I think we're pretty well done here. So we have the service slide here that's done. We have the presentation slide that's done. We have the closing song, and I think we're pretty well done here. So now the question is, if you're doing this on the church computer, it's there already. How do we actually get it from the computer you're working on, the Mac that you're on, up to the church? So what we do is there's a way to actually export out this playlist with all this information, and we use that function to export it out and put that onto Dropbox, so that way when we get into church we can just import that file from Dropbox. So to do that, we select the playlist we want to export, and I can do a right click and choose Export Playlist. When I choose Export Playlist, again I would go to my Dropbox. I always put this into the ProPresenter folder. It just makes it easier when you get to the church computer to put it into the correct folder itself. You'll also want to make sure that you check this Include Media within Presentations. That way if you have any special backgrounds, those will be included as well. You'll notice that it gives you a name here, and this is basically just a zipped file. If I choose Save, that's going to kind of zip up that ProPresenter playlist, and it's going to put it onto Dropbox. You'll see on my local computer here, if I do a right click, it's actually syncing this particular playlist up there. It says it's going to take 6 minutes, 9 minutes. It usually doesn't take too long, it's only 18 megabytes. But that will actually get synchronized up to Dropbox, and then when you get into the church, you can pull that file down from Dropbox. That seems to be the easiest way. You could always export this out to a thumb drive, for instance, and transfer it that way. That's another way of doing it. But we found Dropbox works pretty well. If we go into the Finder and Dropbox, and then I take a look at the ProPresenter folder, this is the file. It says Service 711. This is the one that we actually just created now. Okay, so that's the one that was created now. So when you get to church, I'll just kind of go over that now. So say we're on a different computer here, and we want to pull that down from church. Once we get to church, we just do File, Import, and we're going to import a file. From here, I'm going to browse out to my Dropbox. I'll look in that ProPresenter file folder that we just created. And this is a different one, but it works the same way. So I just highlight the file that I want to import. You'll notice how this one says Services. So it's going to be slightly different than what I have here as far as service. I just do an import on that. It's going to tell me that I already have some of these files in my library because it copied over all the media. So what I do is just do a write over. Choose Apply All, write over. That way if you've changed something slightly, again, apply all, you have to do it twice, write over, and it will bring those playlists in. So now you can see I have this services playlist, and everything is set up how that particular playlist was. It's slightly different than this other one I did. Okay? So now when you're at church, you would have this playlist available to you, and you don't have to recreate anything once you're there. So that is a quick overview of how I create slides and how I do it if I'm using an existing background. Okay, it's a little different if you're actually going to create a new background. That's a little more involved, but I'll try to create another video on that. All right, good luck and take care.